What's going on, everyone? It's another episode of the WVSports.com podcast. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by the one and only Keenan Cummings. For the Mountaineers, it was not how they envisioned Saturday going. They were facing a really good and hot Baylor team, and that Baylor team ran up and down the field, especially in the first half, and then they couldn't recover. West Virginia couldn't in the second half when they had opportunities to get back in the game, eventually losing 49-35. So, Kino, just overall thoughts on the game or where things stand here as they are now 5-5 with 2 to play.
I think the best way to describe what unfolded is just that. Uh, really, because it's just an extension of what we've talked about before. West Virginia refuses to play with all three of their units in synchrony at all. The defense was an absolute mess in the first half. Really couldn't tackle, couldn't get off the field. Gave up some big plays, some plays that really shouldn't have been big, little 3-4 yard dump offs that Baylor was breaking 3 tackles and turning into 40-yard gains. It was just a mess. It was a lot of the things that, we had hoped, talked about maybe being fixed. Obviously they weren't. You don't fix something overnight. It's just not the way it works. But, it was kind of a step back for the unit against a better offense. We talked about that coming into the game. But then, the offense is keeping West Virginia afloat in the first half, playing well, scoring points, getting first downs. They had to punt, I think, twice, but still, for the most part, you're trailing 35-28 heading into half. You're thinking it's going to be 2012. We joked about it, being on pace to be the 2012 game all over again. And the second half, it's a complete role reversal. West Virginia gets exactly what they need out of their defense. They get multiple stops, 3 consecutive stops, get the football in plus field position 3 times, and can't cash in, cannot score. West Virginia actually does not score again in this game until there's about a minute left. The game's already decided at that point. It's just window dressing on another frustrating performance for this West Virginia football team. And Neil Brown addressed it after the game. West Virginia is now 2-4. I was trying to cheat and give them an extra win. When me and you were talking after the game, for some reason I thought they were 3-4 at home. They're not. They're 2-4, and one of those wins is Albany. The other was Kansas in a game that they probably should have lost, but made a great comeback. So, one of the things they talked about in the preseason a lot was protecting home field. You got to win your games at home. Abject failure for this season, in terms of that. They've lost. They haven't just lost. It's 3 consecutive double-digit losses at home where they've largely been uncompetitive at the end of games.
It's 3 consecutive double-digit losses where you're midway through the fourth quarter and the stadium's a quarter full because everyone is going home because they know the end result.
Oh yeah, we the joke about Pitt always is dress up as yellow empty seats. I guess people were dressing up as concrete seats in that game because the second half was a ghost town. I was at field level with about 5 minutes left and just took a look around, and you could hear the Baylor fans. And too often this year, and really over the last couple years, that's been a thing. In Mountaineer Field, home field advantage has not necessarily been there. Now, all things considered, last year West Virginia held serve at home for the most part. They played pretty well at home, got things done. This year, just struggles, and you can sense it. You can feel the frustration, from the coaches, from the fan base, and we're meeting that point where the rubber might have to meet the road here at some point. If this team is 5-5 in a year that you thought, hey,
Big 12
this team
championship.
this team might challenge for a Big 12 title. This team might take that next leap. They're 5-5 and fighting for a bowl game, Wes. A bowl game. That's a step backwards any way you slice it. And I understand mathematically West Virginia is still alive in the Big 12 title race. It ain't happening. If it does, I'll gladly say I was wrong. I'm not above that. But they need a lot to make that happen. You actually had a outside chance had you won this football game and won out. But it's just another notch on a belt of disappointment this season for West Virginia, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. I'll go to this question that Garrett was asked. I thought it was a pretty solid question post game. He was asked, "What does this team play for right now?" Basically, what does this team play for when the entire offseason the talk was, "Let's get to Dallas," and now that Dallas is clear cut out of the picture, it was almost out of the picture before the game, but you
It
still
can
had a
still
chance.
happen mathematically.
Okay,
Mathematically.
let's pause there. But no, I think it was a good question of what does this team play for? Because when the expectations and the internal expectations were so high and the belief was so high, and then here you are 2 months later, and it's like, whoa, this was just not good or not good enough. How do you get up for these last two games? I think that's important. I think that I know you said this to me yesterday is like this team has good culture, but at what point does that culture break? At what point does an injury to your best wide receiver cause some issues internally as far as emotions, as far as things like that? At what point do guys who know that this is it for them, like they've got two left, maybe three, just start to maybe mail it in a little bit, maybe not an entire game, but in spots. Like that's the concern for me is how does this team honestly turn around 6 days after they just got half a hundred hung on them at their home building and say, yeah, we can realistically do this thing. We can realistically win a game. We can realistically then go across the country to Texas Tech on a far flight on a holiday week and win that thing. Like that's my concern is how do they honestly try and figure things out and get up for these last two games? Because Keenan, man, I'm not sure how many people will be at that game at UCF on Saturday with the way they've played at home.
We will.
We will. It looks to be a little chilly. It looks to be like a high of 40 degrees. Playing a UCF team that isn't much better than you are if you're West Virginia.
That's a must win, in my opinion, for West Virginia. They have to win
I
that game.
mean, yeah, but I feel like we've said the word must win. So
No, I'm not. I'm not saying anything in terms of Neil. Like, get
No,
ready.
I know you. I just mean in
They
general.
have to win that game.
I feel like
They
we've
lose
said
that
that.
game, they're going to miss a bowl.
I feel like we said that about. Yeah, you can't go into Texas Tech needing a bowl. Are you kidding me? They would never win that game. But going back to this one, like Garrett Green played well, especially early. I thought that first drive was fantastic. They kind of went up tempo there, which I thought was a good switch. But then Baylor just did whatever they wanted in the first half. Heck, Keenan, they onside kicked to let West Virginia score quicker, it felt, and then just went right back down the field and scored. And they scored so quickly against that West Virginia defense, Keenan, that West Virginia then got the ball back again and was able to go score. Like, I think that speaks more to the West Virginia defense than anything, is that Baylor, in a sense, was like, you know what, we're going to onside kick. We're going to give them a short field. If they score, they score because we know our offense will not be stopped right now. And that's the way it was in the first half, is that anytime there was a third down, it was like, oh, okay, Baylor's just going to pick it up here. And it was just that continued, especially early. And when you spot a team 35 points in the first half, I don't care if your team scored 40 or 20. Like, it is hard to still win that game. And the offense just couldn't click at the right times. I know we talked about the drop on the fourth down in the first half. We talked about punt decisions in the second half. We talked about them just not having it on fourth down twice in a row. It was just a struggle bus. There was no complimentary football. There was nothing that was together. And where this team goes from here at 5-5, I don't know.
That's the problem in a nutshell. What you just said is the problem with this team, and it's been the problem with this team most of the year. There is no complimentary football. You figure out the defense a little bit in the second half. The offense, for lack of a better term, shits it. Same thing in the first half. And, the West Virginia effort in the first half defensively, just that's tough. It's hard to win games like that. You were talking earlier about culture. I do think that is the one thing, that you can point to with Neil Brown since he's been here. His teams haven't quit. They've played hard, and I don't think effort was necessarily an issue. I just think they weren't very good, in the first half or the second half last night. That's going to be tested, I think, more than ever. This is a senior laden group. A lot of seniors on this team. A lot of seniors going to be celebrated next week for Senior Day. A lot of guys that you thought was going to be part of. It's a lot different than this time last year. You go back to December of last year. After the Duke's Mayo Bowl. If I would have told you that this West Virginia team would be 5-5 at this point in the season, I would have had trouble believing that. I really would have.
I would have said if they're 5-5, it's because Garrett probably gets hurt week
Someone's
1
hurt
and doesn't play the whole year or something like that.
Yeah, someone's hurt or something. But
the fact that the games he missed, they won still. If you told me Garrett Green is like Nico Markiel starts road games at Arizona and at Cincinnati and wins them both, I would have said this team probably has 8 wins. At least.
Yeah, it's been a rough year, and you could sense the frustration from Neil in the post game. He basically just said, we're not good enough. We're not giving the fans a reason to be excited. We're losing these games at home. They deserve to see wins, and the frustration's kind of boiled over, I think, in all aspects of the program, and it's just not a good place to be. It's just really, it's so far from where I thought they would be, and I'll take the L on it. I thought this team had a chance to win 9 games, and they're. It's amazing to me that there's 2 games left, and we're talking about them just trying to qualify for a bowl. In no way. I know you got to point to something. You got to have some kind of motivation, or it's just the thing's going to come off the track even worse than it has. But nobody's going to be hanging banners on the Puskar Concourse because they went 6-6 or 7-5. I mean, there's not. There's no way around what unfolded this year. It hasn't been good enough, and I think that anyone can realistically look at this thing. We're 6 years in. I think Neil Brown's 36-34. The coin flip moniker thing is really kind of stuck on the board, and I think it's true. It's basically been a coin flip. Even in that game, as bad as West Virginia played, they had chances to win it.
Yeah, that's what I said at halftime. Like, you were still only down a possession, and then your defense goes out there and gets a stop. I think we talked about it on that first drive. We were like, wow, like this defense, like they really just made a play there. And I know the penalty aided them a little bit, but they were still able to make plays when it mattered most in that kind of fringe range between field goal, punt, go for it type deal. And then they get the ball back and they get moving down the field on all the drives, and then they just
can't finish it.
Just sputters.
Yeah, the most frustrating was the last one. I mean, I think the Justin Robinson drop was pretty bad because that would have been a first down. They probably score on that drive. And I think had they scored on that drive, that changes the complexion of the game. I know it's early. There's a lot of stuff that could still happen, but they'd be playing from a lead instead of trying to play catch up the whole game. So who knows? But I think that was a real chance for West Virginia to seize momentum. And unfortunately, in a tale as old as time this season, they refused to do so. But another, you get down to the 9-yard line, someone completely blows an assignment up front, pressures in Garrett's face. He has to dump the ball off. Cole Taylor makes a fantastic catch for 0 yards. They needed to. So it's just, it is what it is at this point, Wes. It's just you got to hope you can rally a little bit over the next 2 games.
That's my concern, though, is
you got to show some fight at home. I mean, I'm sorry, but there is no excuse, none. And I'm going to go ahead and spoil it right now. I'm picking West Virginia to beat UCF, all things considered. If you don't beat UCF at home, pack it up. Like, you need to beat that team at home. They've had a lot of issues this year. They're 4-6. I know they're fighting for a bowl game, but if you've got any kind of fight left, you got to win that game Senior Day at home. No excuses. Simple as that. I'm very not this blunt typically, but you got to show something at this point. You got to win this game at home. You can't go 2-5 at home. It's just, you can't do that. You want 7 home games for a reason, not to lose them.
Yep. I go back to this a lot whenever we kind of get on these discussions just about bigger picture stuff. I remember back in August when we were talking, I think we were doing our season. I know. Take us back. Our season preview, season prediction type thing. You said something that has kind of stuck with me throughout the year of If not now, when?
I think it's fair.
And I think that's more fair than ever. Like, there's not many situations when you're a football team that you will get better than they had it this year. When you have a senior quarterback, your two toughest conference games at home at night.
Probably a top NFL draft pick at offensive line.
Um, you have two running backs who were pretty reliable, and then you have 7 home games, and you
A
have,
defense with handpicked portal guys that you went out and got.
yep. And so everything seemed to line up the way it could have and should have for West Virginia to have one of those years that people talk about for a while. And
Oh, they
instead,
will, for the wrong
oh yeah,
reason.
that's exactly what I was going to say next. Is you took the words right out of my mouth. Is they're going to talk about this year for a while because of how poor it was, because of how high everyone thought it would be, and how those expectations were far from met. And I know nothing is going to happen now as far as futures of people and staff members and such, but this kind of loss, even after that recent momentum, even after Keenan, we were saying, oh, what if this team gets to 8 wins? What if this team gets to 9 wins? What if this team gets possibly to 7-2 in Big 12 play?
It was a fair question to ask.
It was.
Look at the
But
league. I mean, the
I
league
will say this loss feels
deflating.
a lot more of a step back than those 2 wins felt of a step forward.
And I'll add this, Wes, and I think this is important. Even some of these wins that West Virginia's gotten, fans can't really enjoy them. And what I mean by that is you're up double digits and it becomes you're clenching your butt cheeks at the end of the game because it gets so close when it never should get
Miller
close.
might go for 58 yards on one play.
Yeah, it's those issues. Fans can't even necessarily. I've heard this from people. People have expressed this concern to me, so I'm not just pulling this out of thin air here. Fans can't even enjoy the win sometimes because just mistakes and things let other teams get back into games. I understand football's, you exchange blows, but you got a team down double digits in the fourth quarter and suddenly it's a one possession game and you're fighting for your life. That obviously we all saw the snowball effect at Pitt. And yes, West Virginia's played a relatively difficult schedule, but I think all of us would agree that outside Penn State, there's no game on this schedule that West Virginia can't win. Look at what's happened to Iowa State. Look at what's happened to Kansas State.
Like,
They're good football teams.
Is that going to be their toughest road game? Like that, like theoretically, that doesn't strike so much fear into someone when you say Texas Tech 2 days after Thanksgiving is your toughest road game. Like that, just when that is the case, you shouldn't be 5-5.
No, and you've had all these opportunities at home and just blown them. I mean, every time. And again, this isn't me speaking. This is people I've talked to, from the fan base and people that follow this program. Every time people want to get back in, that meme's going around, trust the climb, loser, get back in, whatever.
Yeah.
That's every time someone wants to do that, this program gives them reasons not to. And any time you can give ammunition or reasons not to, it's going to hurt you at this stage. And I think that, the most telling thing is, I said earlier, we're 6 years in, 70 games, 36-34. And no matter how many things that are good, that the program's doing, we've discussed it. It's a results-based business, and the results simply have not been there to the consistent level that this fan base is used to winning. And the only way to change that is to win games. And if this was an audition,
win games is to. Do you have that magic formula figured out? Because I'm not sure they have it figured out.
Yeah, if this was your audition, this has not been good. And I think that give this fan base credit. I understand that it's been rocky at times for this coaching staff, deservedly so. Neil said it. You deserve criticism as long as it's about the product on the field. I agree with that. And I think that we've been completely fair, to this coaching staff and the situation at large. But you got to win games. And then when you're not winning games, and it's tough because this coaching staff got this team to win 9 games last year. And the fan base is what I was kind of coming back to, really rallied around this program. It was as good as it's ever been in terms of support, people
That feeling
behind
in
it.
Charlotte, Keenan, at that bowl game, it was like that. We have final, like, it was that type of feeling where everyone's here because everyone has been a part of this journey, and we're all going to celebrate this big product of the journey together. And now we have finally taken a step forward. That's what that felt like.
Oh, and then even take that forward into the offseason,
Yeah.
leading up to Penn State. The fan base absolutely support. Look at the attendance for Penn State. That crowd was popping. They were ready to blow. And
Even recently, Keenan, like even last night, like you have to give these people credit. Yesterday afternoon,
oh,
it was dark all day. Like they showed up. It was loud. I know I said to you, it sounds like the loudest it's been since that Penn State game at times. Like they are continuing to show up, continuing to invest their time and everything into this program, and they're not reaping the rewards. And I think ultimately, no matter what, frustration comes from the lack of wins on the field, and they really come when you spend half of your fall coming to West Virginia football games and you are not rewarded with wins. And that's what people look forward to, Keenan. Like, I hate to break it to you, a lot of these people look forward to West Virginia football all year round.
yeah.
And then when they come and it feels like they're getting embarrassed on a weekly basis at home, they have the right to be upset, and I don't blame them.
I've lived that life. Trust me. I was born and raised here. I understand it. It's a little bit different for me now, obviously, in my position, but I understand it completely.
No,
I
you're
understand.
screaming and hollering and hooting on third
Oh,
down
yeah.
in the
I'm getting
press
kicked
box.
out of the press box,
Yeah.
tweeting at people and being all crazy. But no, I think that, it is what it is. And I think I'm not going to do this again because, like you said, it's the must-win game of the week type deal. But West Virginia better beat UCF. I'm gonna close with that. They better beat UCF at home, or this thing gets real dicey real fast. And if it's not already dicey enough,
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure we have reached dicey category level on this thing, but that'll do it for us. If you need more content from this football team, go head over to our website. Also, go to our message boards if you want to have like us talking on a podcast, just on an extended version, basically whenever, wherever you want it. Because those people don't rest. I promise you that they are not. Those fingers, those
great
thumbs are
discussion.
typing away. Yo, it has been really good discussion, I would say, and I want to give a lot of credit to our people on that site. Like they have been very
I think
civil
fair. I
with
think
each
they've been fair.
other and fair and honest. And I think that's all you can ask for from fans is not to try and overreact to things. I think they've been very legitimate and reasonable.
It's important to remember that frustration boils over for everybody. You're going to have guys that are a little pissed, but the point is, if there's passion, it means people care, and people still care about this, and they want to see things get better. That's a good thing. Neil Brown says it all the time. You want to be a place that people care, and people care here.
Yep, 100%. Well, we will have more hoops talk, and football talk this week on the podcast, on the site. Until then, keep it locked here and keep it locked on our website. I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Keenan Cummings. If you made it this far, we do appreciate you listening, and this is the WVSports.com podcast.